Even the most developed nations in the world are failing their citizens. We're often susceptible to idealizing life in the progressive West. What you don't realize is that governments of developed countries are struggling with hefty inflation rates, inhumane healthcare crises, and rising education costs. The war in Ukraine and the post-COVID economy add a new paradigm altogether, and developed states are struggling. In this video, we're assessing the cost of living, healthcare, and education in the US, Canada, UK, Australia, and New Zealand. You won't be surprised to hear that all over the world, the cost of living has increased exponentially. Due to devastating COVID-19 restrictions, the war in Ukraine, and other political crises, the global economy has suffered beyond repair. According to the Worldwide Cost of Living Index, global prices have risen by more than 8% on average in 2022, sparked by the war in Ukraine and zero COVID restrictions in China. Since these events were unprecedented, even the most developed economies in the world are struggling to stabilize. One of the most notable examples has to be the United Kingdom, which is suffering through one of the most devastating costs of the living crisis. As per the Reid survey, you need at least a per annum salary of £65,000 to live comfortably in London. At the same time, average wages in the UK are centered around £33,000. Ever since 2021, the prices of essential goods in the UK have risen more than household incomes. Similarly, Canada's Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, is also under fire for pushing Canadians to live paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah, the new Leger poll found nearly half of us are living paycheck to paycheck, with most young people likely to say their finances are in poor shape.
In August 2023, the country's inflation rate jumped from 3.3% to 4% as gasoline prices skyrocketed. Plus, Canada's housing crisis shows that rising interest rates and rental prices have crushed people's dreams of funding mortgages or living a comfortable life. The average salary in Toronto is $62,050, which is 14% higher than the Canadian average salary of $54,450. However, a single person needs to make at least $4,200 per month to afford rent and basic necessities. The conditions in New Zealand are almost the same. The cost of living for the average household increased by 7.2% in the 12 months to June 2023. Like Canada, New Zealand is also suffering from rising mortgage rates and food prices. Tidings are equally unfortunate in Australia, if not more. In September 2023, The Guardian reported that Australian youth are actively foregoing their social life due to rising inflation in the country. Due to an unprecedented rise in rents by 6.7% and utilities by 14%, Gen Zs are being forced to take up low-paying jobs. The same article also reported that the youth are ditching meals to pay for housing and other utilities. In comparison, the US has been marginally successful in curbing inflation. In July 2023, the government provided much-needed relief to its citizens by decreasing gasoline and food prices after a 2-year turmoil. However, experts believe that important aspects of life like housing, healthcare, education, etc., are more unattainable than ever. And well, the rising cost of living in dream cities like New York supports the argument too. The city itself has become 30% more expensive than the national average, while wages remain stagnant. So far, we've seen how the developed world is struggling to curb the inflation and cost of living. If anything, the pandemic has also exposed these countries for harboring an unaffordable and weak healthcare infrastructure. As it stands today, the staffing crisis is a common theme in our pick of the 5 English-speaking nations. The most notorious case of inhumane healthcare service is in the US, which has one of the most expensive medical services in the world. In 2023, the US suffered the worst staffing crisis in the healthcare department. Nurses, technicians, and first aid responders went on multiple waves of strikes to protest awful working conditions, burnouts, and low wages. If that strain wasn't enough, the rising cost of drugs has hit Americans hard too. Healthcare spending per person in the US was almost $13,000, which is $5,000 more than other high-income countries. For instance, the average price of an insulin vial is $12 in Canada, while it is $100 in the US. However, while healthcare is much cheaper in Canada, the country suffers through a staffing crisis of its own. Experts believe that healthcare in the country is going through a perpetual crisis. This means over the decade, Canada's emergency care has experienced long delays. Even though healthcare in Canada is funded through tax money, the staffing crisis has caused delays in medical response. Similarly, Australia's problem of underfunding public hospitals is worsening the staffing crisis as well. As the government cuts back on healthcare, the immense strain on public infrastructure is noticeable. The workforce shortage has caused patients to wait in long lines to receive vital care. In the private sector, the cost of necessary procedures and services has skyrocketed in the aftermath of COVID-19. It's not surprising that New Zealand has similar problems, but on a moderate scale. This is to say that the government is putting money into the public sector, but still encourages a two-tier system to ensure healthcare accessibility. If anything, the cases of Australia and New Zealand show us that low-cost or free healthcare systems aren't always brimming with reliability, and the UK's healthcare crisis further proves our point. Do you find the video informative so far? Give it a like and subscribe to our channel. We all know that the UK's pride and symbol of being a welfare state is the National Health Service, or NHS. Yet, as the department hits 75 years of service, it's in the worst crisis ever. As the government failed to meet the demand of UK healthcare workers for adequate wages, the system suffered from routine strikes. In August 2023, junior doctors staged a 4-day strike to pressure the government to meet their demands. And that alone caused the NHS to crumble down. According to The Guardian, due to the strike, 819,000 operations, procedures, and appointments in England have been postponed, adding to the 7.5 million people waiting to start routine hospital treatment. So, while the citizens have a free healthcare option, the staffing crisis has forced people to pursue expensive private medical care. Just like healthcare, the education systems of developed economies are also suffering because of underfunding. In the UK, public education is free, and university tuition is capped, unlike the US. However, the underfunding of the sector has caused government schools to crumble, quite literally. Believe it or not, Rishi Sunak is under fire, as his administration directed 150 schools to shut their learning spaces due to deteriorating construction materials.
A total of 15 schools in England and Wales have been forced to close, with no immediate plans to reopen. 29 schools have delayed reopening from the summer break due to safety concerns. 13 schools are partially closed.
The news came out when the schools were about to resume after the summer break. Now, children are out of the classrooms as school leaders are facilitating online classes. If that wasn't enough, UK universities are suffering because of inflation too. Operational costs are at an all-time high. At this point, free education is an illusion, as parents are being forced to spend more and more money on transport, outside tuition, books, lunches, and sports equipment. And this is exactly the problem with Australia and New Zealand as well. Since the governments are only funding academic pursuits, parents have to foot the bill for supplementary material. In fact, an Australian publication has reported that parents can spend up to $10,000 putting a child through the state's free education. All things considered, with rising inflation in both Australia and New Zealand, free education sounds like a scam. On a comparative note, the education system in Canada is free for its citizens and consistently ranks as one of the best in the world. And well, the United States of America can't relate. As usual, the US has been grappling with a crisis as Americans owe $1.78 trillion in student loans. Since the government only offers subpar, low-quality free education till high school, many Americans take federal loans to put themselves through college. The education system in the US is almost diabolical. The state governments aren't interested in funding state schools, and it's a problem when private education, let's say UPenn or Tufts, can cost $76,000 per year. The average cost of putting yourself through college in the US is more than $36,000 USD, including books, supplies, and other daily living expenses. Such numbers seem almost cruel once you realize that the federal minimum wage is still $7.5 per hour. No wonder students opt for highly exploitative and hefty student loans that Republicans aren't ready to forgive. As the government fails to put money into state schools, the crisis continues. Found this video insightful? Like this video, subscribe to our channel, and watch more of our interesting breakdowns of important issues.